Fast viewing. Today I'm going to talk about some of my personal favourite Italian horror films and maybe entice you to watch them yourself. So buckle up as we take a trip into the world of Italian horror movies. I promise not to do the accent ever again. So the term giallo, pronounced giallo if you're Australian, refers to the yellow colour of these pulp horror magazines that used to be popular in the 20s and the 30s in Italy. These Italian giallo books were definitely filled with lots of imagery that would then inspire the filmmakers who made these movies in the 70s and 80s and popularized this genre of film. I like to describe giallo movies as Agatha Christie-like mysteries, but with a huge focus on gore and murder. So instead of just cutting away from the murder, we actually see everything that happens. It's like a much more macabre version of a daytime whodunit mystery. I would personally say if you're not really into horror movies, giallo as a genre is really good to jump into because you get a little bit of mystery, get a little bit of suspense, a bit more thriller vibes, but of course a nice dose of horror and violence. Which is what the people want, right? That's what they want, that's what they crave. I also want to talk about one of the things that I really think makes Italian horror movies from the 70s and 80s stand out, and I think it's the sound design and the music. Back in the 70s and 80s, a lot of the sound wasn't actually recorded while they were filming the movie, so there was a lot of dubbing and editing that was done post the filming process, which gave the filmmakers and the sound designers a lot more control and a lot more opportunity to build surreal soundscapes and really dig deep into that atmosphere. A lot of the music that was used in the 70s and 80s Italian films were usually progressive rock and roll and also heavy metal. Goblin is a band that does a lot of the music for Dario Argento's horror films, so if you do delve into the world of Italian horror, no doubt you are going to hear the work of Goblin. Goblin is this really cool experimental prog rock band that worked a lot with these filmmakers, and a lot of their music is incredibly iconic. A lot of their music manages to be unsettling, eerie, but also downright groovy at times. They were just really good at setting a vibe. So if you haven't already, I would highly recommend going to Spotify and listening to some Goblin. Of course, try not to get confused with the Tyler, the Creator album called Goblin. Go for Goblin and type in, I don't know, Suspiria is a good example. And just relish in the groovy, creepy, and very experimental music that Goblin produced. Alright, let's jump into some of my favourite Italian horror movies. The first one I want to mention is The City of the Living Dead from 1980 by Lucio Fulci. The alternative title of this film is The Gates of Hell, which I really think is a way cooler and way better title for the movie. This film starts with a priest unaliving himself, and of course, that opens the gates of hell, because of course it does. This unleashes an unnatural curse of the undead onto this small town called Dunwich in America, which is in itself a reference to H.P. Lovecraft's work, where he would often use the fictional town of Dunwich. A journalist and a psychic travel to the town to try and put an end to this evil priest's plan and save the world from an apocalypse, so the stakes are pretty high in this one. So other than the crazy plot, what makes this film such a cult classic is all of the macabre and supernatural imagery that takes place. There's a lot of horrific gore that Lucio Fulci is known for, but this film really has some very memorable but also disgusting moments in it. It's a very mean movie. There's parts with innards, there's parts with a buzzsaw, and oh man, even though the special effects are quite dated, I think just the sheer meanness, the sheer cruelty that happens in this film, it leaves an impact on you as the viewer. So if you want a dose of Italian horror, which is blending the supernatural with, the intense ultra-violence that Italian horror movies were so known for, check out The City of the Living Dead, aka The Gates of Hell. Next up is Suspiria from 1977, directed by the legendary Dario Argento. This film is about an American ballet student who uncovers a dark, twisted secret behind a German ballet school. This film is a masterpiece in its cinematography. It's got this striking visual style, but it's of course mixed with the hallmarks of Italian horror films. So you've got ultra-violence, but there is a lot more supernatural elements thrown into Suspiria. It's like a dark fairy tale. So the storyline is quite simple, the narrative is quite simple, but just strikingly amazing to look at. And the music in this film was created by that band I mentioned earlier, Goblin, but Dario Argento said to them, I want you to create a soundscape that is so surreal, so weird, that people just have never heard it before. Make me something so unique that it's going to blow the audience's mind. And they did a great job at doing that. Go and listen to the Suspiria soundtrack. It's this weird mixture of strange sounds and a cacophony of weird, eerie instrumental moments. It's a great soundtrack, and the film itself is just a renowned piece of cinema. So even if you're not a horror fan, chances are you know about Suspiria, or you're going to be interested in it just for the pure craft of filmmaking. Now we move on to Deep Red from 1975, again directed by Dario Argento, and this really is the quintessential giallo Italian horror film. It blends that whodunit mystery perfectly with the ultra-violence, but also a little zest of supernatural elements. This film is about a musician who is the sole witness to a gruesome murder and then is kind of obsessed and pulled into this world and this mystery where they're trying to figure out the truth and who committed the murder. It's a great mystery, and if you're new to horror movies in general, I think Deep Red is a great way to ease somebody into the horror genre. It's got the mystery, it's got the thriller aspects, but it's also just got some great acting and some great intrigue. So I recommend watching Deep Red if you want to check out Italian horror movies and the giallo subgenre of horror, if you just want to delve into that a little bit for your first time, or maybe you're not much of a horror fan and you just want to try out some Italian horror. So there you go, Deep Red from 1975. Now for something a little bit more sleazy, it's The New York Ripper from 1982, directed again by Lucio Fulci. This film is about a sadistic killer who is murdering people in the dirty streets of New York and essentially taunting the local police department, the NYPD, and leaving them cryptic clues and messages with the bodies of his victims. So this film is a lot more gritty and nasty compared to the other films on this list. It's got a lot of ultra violence and some pretty infamous dialogue involving a Donald Duck impression. Yes, you heard that correctly, a Donald Duck impression. But if you're somebody who can handle a little bit more gore and want to explore the darker side of the giallo genre, then I highly recommend checking out The New York Ripper. Now let's move on to Phenomena from 1985, directed yet again by Dario Argento. This one stars a young Jennifer Connelly, who plays a young girl who can communicate to insects. Yes, you heard that correctly, she can communicate to insects. She gets involved in solving a bunch of murders that are happening around her Swiss boarding school. This film leans into its more supernatural elements and includes a lot of dreamlike, surreal cinematography and sets itself apart from Dario Argento's other films. It's definitely a bizarre movie and feels like it shouldn't really work, but it definitely does. When all the pieces come together, it's a great, strange Italian horror movie. See, it still includes Dario Argento's signature style, but just goes places that some of his other movies didn't. But I'm still happy to report it still has the strange ultra-violence and weird, bizarre sounds and soundtrack by Goblin coming in again. Goblin bringing it in for a clutch with their great music, but also includes Iron Maiden and Motorhead on the soundtrack. which is really, really interesting. All of this stuff doesn't seem like it would work. You've got a girl who's telepathic and can talk to bugs and insects. You've got a string of murders happening. Not to mention there is a monkey in this movie. I love Phenomena. Check it out if you get a chance. You won't regret it. Next up is Demons, or Demoni, from 1985. Wow, they made a lot of movies in 1985. This film is directed by Lamberto Bava and is about a bunch of people who go to a movie theater to watch a horror movie, and demons come through the cinema screen. This is a film with pure chaos, but it is a lot of fun. It's got some great special effects, specifically the demon transformations, but really it's just a chaotic fight for survival in this movie theater. Also, more movies need to be set in cinemas because this film is just a treat. If you like 80s horror, even if just taking away the fact that it's an Italian horror movie, if you like 80s horror movies, you're going to love Demons. This is just a batshit crazy film, and I absolutely adore it. And it's got a great soundtrack. Goblin, come back for the soundtrack. But there's also Billy Idol and I believe Motorhead. I could be wrong, but there's some great rock and roll tracks in this movie. And then all of the ultra violence and the overacting and the dubbed dialogue. Check out Demons, also known as Demoni, and if you can watch it in Italian, I recommend that as well. And finally, let's talk about Zombie from 1979, directed by Lucio Fulci once again. The alternative title to this film is Zombie Flesh Eaters, which, again, way cooler title than just Zombie. Zombie Flesh Eaters. This is an iconic cult zombie movie about a Caribbean island which becomes infested by zombies, and a group of strangers, of course, come to the island and have to fight for their survival, but also uncover the mystery of why the hell there are zombies on this island to begin with. It's got some great special effects and some very memorable, iconic moments that I think you'll find on a lot of cult horror lists on YouTube. So it's got the very infamous scene where a zombie fights a shark, and this is a film that was made in the 70s, so there's no special effects. I mean, they could have used special effects, but no, there is actually a man dressed as a zombie fighting a great white shark. It's a sight to behold. If you're a fan of zombie films, I think this one is essential viewing. It's one of those movies that helped define the genre, especially as it impacted and influenced Italian zombie filmmakers. You know, there's a lot of sleazy, weird, gritty zombie movies that came from Italy around the 70s and 80s, and this is one of those like pinnacle movies that you need to experience just to understand how crazy it was getting at that time in the landscape of the zombie genre. Also, it does include a very gruesome, strange eyeball scene. So if you don't like eyeballs and eyeball horror, body horror, eyeball horror, maybe skip this one. But if you feel like you can handle that, or maybe you're just morbidly curious, go check out Zombie from 1979. So there you have it. That's a list of some of my favorite Italian horror movies. Let me know down in the comments, what are some of your favorite Italian horror flicks to watch? These films really just represent like great craftsmanship in the horror genre and really just signify a moment in history and can really just be appreciated today, because at the end of the day, Italians contributed so much to the horror genre and building and developing it. And these movies are still being enjoyed in this ripe old year of 2024. So yes, please continue to be spooky, continue to be creative, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later.